What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Have you ever wondered, can you communicate directly with spirit guides, teachers, or non-physical consciousness, or even our higher selves? What would they tell us? My name is Kevin Moore, and since 2015, I started to practice a form of communication which is termed channeling. I have been interviewing experts on my talk show to find out, does life continue after we die, and can we communicate with those that have crossed over? With each expert I spoke to, they all had different ideas. Is there knowledge from the past which could be shared with the present moment? So I thought, why not just speak to the non-physical world directly through channelers around the world? And that's what I set out to do. They Call Us Channelers will take the viewers on a journey into the phenomena known as channeling. And my main goal with this docu-series is to bring a new understanding and awareness to channeling by looking within ourselves and asking, is it truly possible that we can all use this innate ability?
Just a normal, regular life.
Well, if you could say normal with 5 kids. There's never normal when you're raising 5 kids, but yeah.
Any interest in the subjects of spirituality, anything there in the family at all?
No, I was kind of interested, well actually, when my son Lucas was, I'm going to say 4, he had a high fever, and I was holding him. He started talking about how he used to be a little girl in Jamaica, and his parents were plantation owners, and that they were having a picnic by a waterfall. He was in a dress. Now, what guy is going to, say he was a girl? Really, you just don't make that stuff up. And he started twirling around, singing something about some song, and he said, "Papa was." My mommy and Maria, our housekeeper, who has been with us since Erik was 18 months old, was my daddy. And then he had a seizure or just fell, and he said, then I went into the water and I saw bubbles coming in out of my mouth, and then I was in a nice warm place, meaning a womb, obviously. And so I was writing all this down and stuff. So then I decided to research it, and so I picked up Carol Bowman's awesome book, Children's Past Lives, and I thought, wow. And so I really pretty much connected to reincarnation and those stories. And then, no, this was after. Eventually I started reading near-death experiences. I can't remember if I did that before Erik's death or not, but I always felt there was a higher something, but I thought it was just like a massive energy source. I didn't feel like it was, some guy with a beard on a throne up in heaven. So that was pretty much the extent. I was raised Catholic until I, kind of had to be, because my great uncle was Cardinal of Spain, so kinda. And then my parents decided they didn't want to go to church anymore, but they wanted, out of respect to us, for us to make our own decision. Now we were just little, 5, 6, 7 years old, and my parents took each of us separately into a different room and asked. My father chose me and said, Elisa, do you still want to go to church? To me, it's like, no, because it seemed like every time we went to church, they would pass by their clinic, they were both doctors, and catch us up to date on our immunization. So I didn't really, and it was all in Latin, so. And my father said, Elisa, do you still want to go to church? I go, well, I don't want to go to hell. Oh, there's no such thing. Jackie, you don't want to go. So that was the end of my Christianity upbringing.
Your degrees and everything else, what did you actually get? What did you become, in a sense, in your career-wise?
Oh, internist, internal medicine doctor, somebody who specializes in usually adult medicine, but I bought my parents' practice out, and they saw everything, little kids, newborns, and so I did too.
Never any talk about spirituality or past lives in that circle, or
no,
channeling?
I really do not discuss it with my colleagues, because you know how doctors can be a little close-minded, full of ego. Not all of them, of course, but I just didn't put it out there. We just kept it within the family.
So with Erik then, what kind of boy was he?
Oh gosh, he was two types of boys, basically. He was such a little creative rascal, loved pranking his siblings. He liked pestering them a lot. He was so happy. He loved women. He adored women. He'd always say when he was little, just, yay high, you're so beautiful. I love your hair. That's such a pretty dress. Things like that. And he was very, very empathetic. I remember, for example, this is a quintessential Erik when he was little. I took him to get his, immunizations. He came back home. I was carrying him. He had like a million Band-Aids on his thigh, and he was teared up and crying a little bit. And my husband said, Erik, how are you? And he didn't want Papa to feel sad for him, so he said, I have a good time, and started patting my back, So that was typical of him. As he got older, he still had that quality. He just, for some reason, lost souls gravitated toward him. For example, he'd go to Starbucks around the corner, mostly because he wanted to bum cigarettes, but he wanted to meet people. He was kind of lonely, and he had certain qualities about him that alienated people, like he had some tics, some motor tics, and some verbal tics, and but if people would just show up and want to sit by him and share their life story, and a lot of times they'd end up in tears because their stories were very sad. And Erik would say, hey dude, don't worry, you are coming home with me. My mom's going to make you a home-cooked meal. It's like, okay, put the frozen Stouffer's lasagna back in the freezer, go out and get a real meal going. And so he loved taking care of people and taking them under his wing. I remember, quite a while after he died, I was going through his Facebook messages, and so many of them were like, hey, I see you're having a hard time. Do you want me to come sit with you for a while? Erik's message to various people. But he also had the dark side. He suffered from bipolar disease, so he had these inner demons that were very difficult for him. He was a target for so many bullies, including teachers. You know, there's one teacher that said, "You're stupid," things like that. And he'd have his friends, he'd call, and they'd pick up and then click, hang up on him. Or they'd invite him over and then leave the house before he got there. So he felt betrayed a lot. So, yeah, and eventually became too much for him.
Did you recognize at any of that stage when it was becoming too much for him?
Well, yeah, he tried to take his life before. Maybe, I don't know, I think maybe a couple of years before. And he took an overdose of an ADHD medicine called Provigil. And my husband and I were in our bed, and here comes Erik with a metal clipboard, like out of it. And he was scribbling stuff, and he said, "Oh, you know, I saw Denise, and now she actually has a torso," and blah, 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 and writing this scrabbly all over this paper. And I thought, oh my God, something's happened. And so I took his vital signs, and clearly he, you know, his pulse was really high and such. And so I called his psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist, and poison control and all that. And the psychiatrist said, "Well, we don't admit people to the psych," well, I don't know why she said that, the psych ward anymore. You just have to take care of him at home. So I sat up with him, and all of a sudden he was on the couch holding two invisible hands saying, "Allie, I love you," and "Oh, Denise, you're my favorite aunt." So clearly he was seeing my sister, Aunt Denise, and Allie, someone who was really one of his girlfriends, who was shot in the back of the head accidentally by a guy who thought it was unloaded at a graduation party in front of all the peers. So, and that devastated him, by the way. That really was a very difficult thing for him. And so he had obviously just crossed the other side. I'm sure he had a near-death experience in retrospect, and he was seeing spirits. So.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and maybe he wouldn't have recognized exactly what it was or been able to name it, but yeah. What led to the events that happened then?
I just don't remember anything specific happening, other than that he was just in one of his down phases, really. But I think looking back, it was probably part of his spiritual contract to have a short life, to come here, suffer, so that he could develop the compassion, the listening skills, and such that he would need as a spirit guide. And I think that the brush with the Allie's death probably, gave him some sort of foundation to understand how precious life is, and also the near-death experience, seeing the other side, so that he would be familiar with that when he eventually did take his life. But I don't know.
And that took place in this house, didn't it?
Yeah, upstairs. Yeah.
What happened there? I mean, if you want, okay to talk about it. I mean, what?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
He pawned a bunch of stuff that was locked up in a closet. Used a crowbar to open it, so he could buy a gun. He loved guns, how ironic, but he wanted this beautiful rifle with a scope on it. And he got in trouble for it. We basically told him, we didn't yell at him or anything. We said, you're going to have to take it back and get our stuff back. But he was the kind of guy who wanted a material good to bring him out of his depression all the time, searching for a new hobby, a new fun toy. And we took that away from him. And I also said that he was going to have to go to school. School was, he went to welding school, and your school is going to be starting at 4, so be sure you go. He said, I don't think I'm ever going to go to school again. And I thought he was just being his usual passive-aggressive self, that he wanted to upset me, punish me for making him take back the rifle. because we had a lot of career changes that we were very costly, you know, different paths that he had. So he was like, I thought he was saying, well, I'll show you. I'm not going to even go on this career path, so you're going to have to pay for another one for me. But no, he wasn't intending to go to school ever. So my sister Terry from California was here and about to go back home, and I wanted to take her to lunch first. So his younger sister, Annika, went with us because she had a cold. And Michelle, his sister, went, and I stopped and said, do you want to come with us? Nah, I don't think so. And he went upstairs, and we left. And on the way to eat lunch, I had this headache, you know, and I felt this weird feeling like sometimes I have, maybe I'm channeling, before you get a fender bender, you know, like a day or two before, you get this uneasy feeling of dread that something's going to happen. I felt that. But I thought, well, maybe it's because my sister is going to go and I'll miss her. And then we were next to the Olive Garden, which I will never go to again. And I get a call from Maria, and she said in Spanish, Elisa, I heard a sound, a loud sound, and I'm scared. And for some reason, I just knew. I had no idea he had a gun. None. It ended up that one of his best friends let him buy a gun because he was underage and his best friend was not. And he hid it. Every once in a while, because he was suicidal often, I would go through his room and look for everything. And right before then, I did look, but oh my God, his room was a freaking mess. It looked like, you know, the scene for a documentary on F5 tornadoes. It was really bad. So I was going through stuff a couple of days before, and you know, I just said, this is hopeless. So I didn't keep looking, and maybe I would have found it. It was in the trundle part of his bed in a drawer. So anyway, I knew what was happening, so Terry and I switched seats, and she drove as fast as she could, everybody screaming, and Michelle was calling 911, and I told Maria, can you check on him and see if he's okay? I said, you don't have to if you don't want to. So she said, no, I will, and she opened the door, and her scream, I just will never forget that. It is ingrained in my memory forever. And then I knew, you know. So, oh God, there's chaos. I'm holding Annika in my lap. She's 16, and we're all crying and calling, and called Rooney and said, Erik just shot himself. And he goes, oh no, like that. And he comes, you know, it was just such chaos. And anyway, I remember jumping out of the car, running up to the front door, ringing the doorbell, and Maria wouldn't answer, and it was so frustrating because I got to get there. Maybe he's salvageable. She took forever. I don't know why. Anyway, she eventually opened it. I ran upstairs and I smelled the gunpowder, and I don't go up those stairs anymore. I always take the long way around and go up the other stairs. I can't, you know. And I opened the door and saw him, and it was just something a mother should never see. And I buried my head in his lap and just kept crying, why? And I listened to his chest, and it was so quiet. I used to lay my head on his chest all the time since he was little. And I always heard that heartbeat, and I didn't. And then the police come, and I'm saying he's dead, and the detective says, yes, I know, and come with me. And unfortunately, Michelle came upstairs and looked too, and I looked back at her and saw her face of horror, and I said, Michelle, please go. So the rest was, I don't remember much of the rest. I remember the cleanup crew coming, and that was horrible, hearing carpets being ripped up, and anyway, it's just horrible to have to pick out the clothes he was going to wear, the casket. And I just didn't like that at all. But anyway, I called my father to tell him too, And his first words to me as an atheist was, "Sorry, Lisa, but Eric's going to turn to dust." So imagine my surprise when 3 days after his death, my father calls, all upset, panicky, saying, "Elisa, I was sitting in my chair reading the paper, and all of a sudden Erik appears before me, looking like he's totally in the flesh, and then he turns into his little boy self and crawls into my lap." And says in Spanish, my father's from Spain, things come in threes. I still don't understand what that meant. But he said, I don't know, I'm so startled, I don't know what to believe. Now, this is not a guy who would make something like that up to give me hope. He was a really nasty man, really bad, very abusive person. And so that's when I thought, well, maybe there's something to this. I mean, I'm agnostic, but... So then I started reading all sorts of books on quantum physics, on near-death experiences, on the survival of consciousness, all the scientific literature I could read, controlled studies on mediums, etc. And eventually I ran out of material to read, or at least material I could understand, because some of it was pretty complex. And I decided to go to a medium. I knew that most parents who lost a child do that, usually out of desperation. And to me, if you had told me, hey, medium, my first vision would be a gypsy hunched over a crystal ball. I mean, I was not a believer at all. But so when I visited Jamie, all she knew was my name and my credit card number. She did not know anything. And she said, "Your son, Erik, is here, and he says he took his own life and how he did it, what kind of gun he used, the exact description of his clothes, even the sailor talk he used, dropping F-bombs, which he was not comfortable with. But, I thought, wow, there's no way she could have known this stuff. And she captured his personality so beautifully, and none of that was on the internet. And at that same time, and so I kept having sessions, the first ones were very personal, like why, and could we have prevented it, and things like that. But then I started asking about what was death like, and what's the afterlife life like, and what is it like to be a spirit, and are your emotions different, etc. Just a lot of detail. Along the same time, my eldest daughter, Christina, made a blog for herself called Pretty Shiny Sparkly, a fashion blog and beauty blog to put some light into her life. And she made a blog for me, channeling Erik, so that I could have a place to vent my grief and to, help others have a place that was where they were supported and loved, where they could vent to.
When you went to go see Jamie and had come back from those first few kind of sessions, obviously the rest of the family was grieving pretty badly at the time.
Oh, yeah.
What did that do for them?
Oh, they became believers too. Our paths followed, our journeys followed. All my kids, my husband, we followed the same track. Nobody was ever ahead or behind of the other. Yeah. And they had experiences like Annika, was coming around the front of the car. We were going to go somewhere, and she passed in front of the car, looked to the window, and saw Erik sitting in the seat. And she sees auras, she sees dead people, so she has that gift as well as my granddaughter, Arlene. And so yeah, and also we experienced a lot of crazy stuff happening, like unplugged appliances going on. For example, this kitchen was gutted. We were remodeling. I mean, this whole area, the kitchen over there and this area, so there was no power to it. Yet every time Rooney came home for several days from work, through the garage door to the kitchen, the downdraft vent would come out, the stuff that sucks all my smoke when I burn my cooking. Anyway, it went up and down. And the Viking appliance guy couldn't figure it out because it didn't have any power to it. And airsoft BBs would appear at the ceiling and drop to the floor. Faucets would turn on. I was in my bathroom and Michelle was with me and we just watched as the faucet turned all the way on. The deadbolts would lock while we watched it. And he called us on the telephone once. So that brought us along pretty much too.
So as you've gone on this path of channeling Erik, the wonderful work that you're doing, this has been your family's healing as well as much as yours.
Yeah, thankfully. And we're a very close, loving family. We love each other so much. Not a day goes by, not a phone call ends without, I love you. Or nobody leaves without, be careful driving, I love you. So that helped heal too.
So just moving this forward then to the blog.
Mm-hmm.
What was the evolution of that? Because you've come so far in it, but so much has happened in that from when that started.
Yeah, it has evolved. First, it was mostly about sharing grief, and trying to help others, because that's how I healed. And maybe that's why I'm a physician. I heal best when I help others. It helps me, And eventually, it became very interesting to the blog members to find more about the other side, more about the other side, and more about big things like time and God and love and the life of the spirit, etc. And I started sharing some of the crazy experiences, these paranormal experiences. One thing that we did experience, for example, is a few days after Erik died, I was going to his room, and I don't know why, because I just didn't want to go there, but Michelle was following me, and she was very close to Erik. She sensed his energy for some reason, and there was a camera on the table in the room upstairs, and she decided to start taking pictures. We looked at the pictures, and in one of them was this bright, bright globe with a comet tail. And, it's clearly something moving. So we get it analyzed by a couple of photo experts, and they said it's emitting its own light source. And you can even see when they took the gamma all the way down, I have no idea what that means. You could see light shining on the banister, for example. But it's really weird because I still did not totally believe the whole thing for probably 4.5 years after his death. I was 94%, But things would happen, like I would see him jumping on the foot of my bed. I just had not even laid my head down on the bed to go to sleep. I was clearly awake. And there's Erik jumping from one side to the other with my sister Denise sitting on the opposite corner. And she's looking at him like, you're such a fool. You're being silly. And then he turns his head and looks at me and looks shocked. And I hear him say, Mom, you can see me. And he rushes into my arms, and I kind of feel him, man. His body was like solid, and it was electrical feeling, like I entered some sort of electrical field. But then time would pass, doubt would creep in, and I think really I kind of didn't want to believe, because what if I really did believe, like 100%, and then, I found out something that proved to be all nonsense, because that would be like losing him again, but forever. So I couldn't get to that 100% until one particular event happened. And that was hearing his voice, an EVP, on one of the sessions with Jamie. Mm-hmm. That was it, clearly. His voice. I mean, a mother recognizes the sound of his own kid's voice.
But no matter how much proof anyone can give, it's still not enough.
For a lot of people, it's never enough.
Never enough.
But for me, hearing him, knowing my kid's voice, that was it.
What is the difference between the channelers bringing Erik through compared to a medium connecting with Erik?
The good medium, I've been through, had sessions with mediums that were not very good. I've been through a lot, and it's really hard to find a good one, and I have. They're very similar as far as how they bring across Erik and his personality. It all just shines through. And apparently he's pretty easy to channel. I think his energy is just so big because he gets so much love from the tens of thousands of blog members. And I think that energizes them. I don't know. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
Why? Obviously, you must have covered this, but was this his life plan? Was it to do this?
Yeah. Was life plan to come and suffer so that he could, develop the skills he needed to be a guide, to have empathy and compassion, listening skills, etc. No, it's rare for a suicide to be a spiritual contract, but in his case it was. Almost never is it.
Do you feel, because he was the age he was, well, on this earth plane the age he was, do you feel that actually that makes him more on the same level as other people? He's more approachable in the level of information.
Yeah.
Rather than being way out there.
Oh yeah, he's like a dude that curses, and people can relate to that. And he doesn't curse as much anymore. The reason he said he cursed before is so that people could feel that he was approachable. And he says that words are basically a string of letters, and they get their power from the intent behind them. So when he drops an F-bomb, there's an intent of love. He is not going to be one of these spiritual gurus that start with, "Welcome, my dear one." Not him. So he's not on this elevated plane. He just feels like one of us. He has a very human quality about him, and a very young, useful quality about him.
What is there obviously there's past life connections with Erik. This isn't your first life together. Has that come through?
It probably has, but I can't remember. I've had so many sessions, I just don't remember. I know we've had past lives together. I'm sure that Robert can probably share some of those. Yes, but I know he had some difficult past lives where he has been abandoned and where he struggled, basically.
Yeah. So obviously, channeling Erik as a YouTube channel and the website and everything else, the mobile apps that you've got, it's all just taken off, and you must get a lot of emails, confirmation from other people, just how much you've helped them with putting this material out there. Well,
to Erik doing all of it, really. I mean, most of it. I just am the transcriber and the one that pays the bills for the blog. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's just, to me, I'm just this little old broken woman sitting on my couch, typing away, and it's just hard. It's almost overwhelming to know what's going on out there. It's not real to me, in a way, because it's in cyberspace. But I had one comment on the blog. I was going to kill myself today, but after reading this post, I want to live, and that guy's still around. Or this one lady, she lost her son too, and she had been going to a therapist for a year or two, and it just didn't seem to help in her case, but therapy, I think, is very important in most cases. And so after her last session with the therapist, she decided to go home and kill herself. So she got everything ready, and I can't remember exactly how she was going to do it, but it doesn't make any difference. But she felt nudged to go to her computer and type in, "My son is dead." And up pops the blog, Channeling Erik. And she reads it from the beginning to the end, makes the decision that life is worth living and that she can continue to have a relationship with her son, just like I do. So, and that's the point. You really don't lose anybody. They just drop their bodies and they're living in some parallel realm, and you don't have to let them rest in peace. God knows Erik never lets me rest in peace, but you can continue to have a relationship with them, and most of them do want you to.
I suppose having the family's support there throughout this has been so important to you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Especially, there's some tough times where you get a lot of hate mail. You're talking to the devil, you're going to go to hell, your son is in purgatory, you're exploiting your kid's death for money, which I don't make any money from this. I pay a lot, actually. I mean, it costs a lot to run this thing, and I refuse to profit from it, of course, in any way. I mean, just the thought of it makes me nauseated. So yeah, so that they are very supportive during those times. But now I don't read the YouTube comments, really. I can't do it.
No. No, and all you can do is just send a bit of love to them when they
Yes,
send it.
that's what I do. When I do, maybe on a couple of them that had a little, written temper tantrums, but usually I just back up. These are people who need love. Sometimes the people who are hardest to love need it the most, so I go there.
Would you be surprised where this work's going to take you?
No, I mean, I kind of feel like I've got this 100-pound Doberman on a leash and it's just dragging me around. I don't know where it's going to go, So I've written a couple of books that just somehow, like you're noticing, everything just seems to fall into place when it's right. And so those books helped heal me too. The first one, My Son in the Afterlife, sort of documented my travel from being a skeptic to a believer, but also added a lot of what Erik says about the afterlife and so on. And then the second one really healed me. My Life After Death, totally channeled with the help of Jamie from Erik, and he describes everything in such great detail from moments before his death to the present. And I mean, he gives such a detailed description of the afterlife and what his life is like as a spirit, what his senses are like, what his emotions are like, what the sky is like, what God is like, what crossing over is like for him anyway. And it was kind of hard to do the whole death thing though, because there were details I learned that were so graphic, and I just almost wish I didn't. And when I was channeling that, when I was transcribing that part, I almost stopped writing the book because it was very painful. But I continued because I knew it was important for Erik.
And how did your colleagues take the work that you're doing now? I know I asked you that question prior to sort of, was there anyone into that type of material? But now they see, because obviously you've left that career path, haven't you?
Yeah, right. After Erik died, I went back after a couple of weeks. First patient was a head injury, so I just sewed him up and took care of him, and then threw up in the trash can and left. Told him I'm not coming back. I knew I could save more people doing what I'm doing now, and I feel like that's true. And it gives, what does every mother want? They want their child to be happy, fulfilled, and productive. And I feel like I'm doing that for my child. He's still my kid, even though he's wiser than me now.
Well, aren't we all gods at this level? Aren't we all gods having a human experience, though?
Well, that's true. I like that, yeah. So, yeah, but you'd be surprised how many people come out of the closet. Like, if I go to one of my husband's Christmas party, they'll ask, so what do you do? Well, I'm a doctor, but I retired. Well, what do you do now? And I go, oh, God, you really want me to open up this can of worms? Oh, geez, because you never know what you're going to get, okay? You don't know if somebody is a Southern Baptist or whatever. So I say, I don't even know if I want to open this can of worms. Oh, no, go ahead. And as I tell my story, like some of the experiences, paranormal experiences, for example, almost all of them will say, oh my God, that happened when my uncle died and blah, blah, blah. Or one lady said, oh, guess what? The other day I saw 2 angels standing by my dumpster and things like that. They come out of the closet. Like they've been afraid to express it. So I think there's a lot of people that have had spiritual experiences that are too afraid to share it for fear of ridicule. But Arthur Schopenhauer said that truth goes through 3 phases. First, it's ridiculed, and oh God, I get a lot of that. Then it's scorned, get a lot of that. But eventually it's accepted as self-evident. And that's what happened with the whole, the earth is flat, the earth is round thing. Those who, figured out, who was it that figured out the earth was round? Galileo but anyway, Google it. And that person got ridiculed and scorned and thrown into jail, I think. I can't remember. But guess what? The earth, it's round. And I think we're going through that whole thing with channeling and with spirituality. We're going through those phases.
What would you say is one of the most important messages that Erik brings through again and again?
Oh, there's so many. One is the importance of emotional honesty, and that takes vulnerability, which comes from a place of power, really. I mean, strength. Vulnerability, like society deems it, is really not about weakness. So being emotionally honest with other people and with yourself. And another thing he says, I can't just pick one, is feel first, think second. Most of us, we have a thought, and that evokes an emotion, and that emotion makes us produce some sort of choice or decision. Really, we should feel, get in touch with our feelings, let that produce a thought, and let that thought create the choice. So, and I guess the third one would be that there's no reason to stop having a relationship with people just because they've died. No reason.
Well, if there's anything you'd like to add right now.
Shout out to my boy. I love you. And I love my husband. He's been such a tower of strength, even though he was suffering too. You know, a lot of times the fathers are silent grievers. They feel like it's their job to support everybody else, and they suffer in silence. So my shout out to men, open your heart. The only way to get through grief is to lean through it, to get to the other side. And it's okay to be vulnerable and to be sad and to cry, instead of feeling like you have to support everybody else.
Just thank you so, so much.
Anytime.
What I'm interested in, Robert, is how did you first meet Elisa?
It was her son, actually. I was at home. I had been ill, quite ill, and I was in a very dark place emotionally. And I had actually cut off speaking to spirit, because I've spoken to, spirit since I was like 3 or 4. And I don't know, maybe around 2001 or so, I cut it off because there was a lot of traumatizing things that had happened, and I kind of shut it down. And then had some health issues, and it got into a very dark place. And all of a sudden one day, I was sitting at the computer, and this boy shows up, just out of the blue, and I was like, I don't want to speak to you all. I told you all, leave me alone. He wouldn't go away, though. He was like, very like, I'm not going to listen to your boundaries. I'm going to just do what I want. And he was, thin guy with messy hair, and he was just talking to me, and like just kind of casual stuff. And he was like, so you don't have any faith, right? And I was like, well, no. And he knew that I was very interested in science and quantum physics and things like that. And he's like, well, then go to your science site. There's something there I want you to see. So I went, and it was the very first article was about quantum physics and how it could bridge the gap between the physical and the spirit world. That's not necessarily the headline that it used, but that's basically the gist of it. I was like, well, that's pretty neat. I was like, well, maybe I'll listen to this guy. And then he basically led me to an article that his mother had written, which then led me to the blog. And I read the blog, and I didn't, because sometimes I can just be a little like very focused on one thing, and which is the way Erik can be too sometimes. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together. This was him, even though I saw his picture on the site and stuff. I was like, not even thinking about that. I was just reading the words, and they hit me it was very, very powerful the way it hit me. And I felt like I was waking up, like coming alive. Because the words were, they were expressing some of the grief that I had expressed, even though I hadn't lost a child. And, they were inspiring to me in an emotional way, separate from that. And then, like, I started realizing that the words, she was transcribing one of Erik's sessions, like, they sound a lot like this boy that I'm talking to. And I was like, is this you, Erik? And he's like, bingo. And then, I found out later that he would say that sometimes. And so then he was trying to get me to contact his mother directly. And I'm a very, like, to myself kind of person, I tend to keep to myself. And I was the last thing I was going to do was contact his mother. He kept insisting that I do. And I wouldn't. It took him weeks. And finally I told him, I said, well, you need to give me proof that she would be open to me contacting her. Because, I mean, from my perspective, the way I saw it was, it's like, like I'm going to, like, just out of the blue contact her and tell her dead son is talking to me. And, like, how would that look? It wouldn't look very authentic to me. It would seem opportunistic, It could be perceived that way. And I wasn't going to do that. So I asked him to show me evidence that she'd be open to that. And so he said, well, go to, I remember I was on the page and he said, go to the third post. So I went to the third post and he said, in the comments, it's right there. Because he gets aggravated sometimes. He's the only spirit I ever met that gets an attitude sometimes. And he does, but for good reasons. And right there in the comments, she had said, look, I want to hear, somebody was asking her if they could contact her. And she said, well, sure. She said, I want to hear. She said, even if you've heard from my son, she literally used those words, then please email me. I was like, oh, okay. So I was kind of like surprised, really. And also like, well, shit, now I got to contact her. Because I really wanted to stay in my own little world. And so I contacted her and we messaged some through Gmail, Google Mail, and some through Facebook. And we went back and forth, and it took like weeks before she could convince me to come over, because I wouldn't. And we talked on the phone for like a long time, a really long time, because neither of us really like to talk on the phone very much, and we both talked for like over an hour, or probably several hours. And then we met up, and the rest is history. After that, he started pranking me, at the house. He flushed my toilet. He messed with the lights. I would be in the grocery store walking around, and foods that he enjoyed, like Twizzlers, for instance, they would literally fly off the shelf, like somebody flung it off into my cart. He would tell me things that he enjoyed in life, foods that he would eat, and then I would let his mom know and his dad know. And, they would say, yeah, all kinds of things. Because there's been so many things that he's done outside of that provided validation of him. He never really told me why I was supposed to connect with them, other than it was just really important. I was like, well, okay. You can't give me specifics. But he later told me in life, if I give you specifics on all that, then you'll start trying to calculate and make those things happen. You just have to let it play out. And secondly, you'll probably get overwhelmed by it because you're such a nervous ninny. So he speaks to me like that all the time. But he's become like exactly the kind of energy I needed in my life, which I didn't know. I can be very resistant to change. Lisa knows that. And, he helped to pull me out of that. Him and his family, they literally saved me, because I would have been someplace else that would not have been good if I hadn't met them. And it's really incredible. I just never dreamed in a million years I would become best friends with a ghost, a spirit, In the past, they just were people that were very transient, And he's always around. He's always picking on me. He's made jokes about my clothes. I don't know if you'll put this in, but it was pretty funny to me. One day I was walking down the street And I'll tell you the reason he did this too, by the way. He has a purpose to everything he does. I was walking down the street and he said, "Dude, you look like you're wearing a garbage bag." And I was like, "What?" So I looked in the window, and I did. I looked very like unkept, and he's like, "Dude, I thought it was funny, but he was getting a point across that you need to have pride and you need to take care of yourself, right? Start dressing yourself a little better and things like that, and it's very much in his style. He does that with other people too in different ways, and I love that about him.
Thank you very much. So this work's definitely impacted you in a very positive way.
Very positive, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you've always had those mediumistic psychic skills?
Yeah, since I was 3 or 4. It was when I was very young. I would speak to them. I didn't know who I was speaking to. It was just different people really, and they were always very supportive. They would tell me things meant to like help me to accept the world the way it is, or they would like say, "Oh, well, look at that," and tell me what you see. So, for instance, I would look at plants, and I would see the plant, and I would see how pretty it was, because I was very into just the beauty of things when I was little. I was very interested in nature and all of that. But when I would look at a plant, I wouldn't just see the plant. I would see like this glow to it. But when I was a child, I didn't realize that I was seeing that until later, which I'll explain to you how that happened. But I would also see like all these little bubbles in it, like just an infinite number of them all in the plant. And I came to realize later that, that was something that I would equate to being like atoms, right? And it was not, and then if I would focus on something else, I would be able to see the same thing. And then when I was like about 6, I think, or so, we were living in a very old house. And there was, in the stairwell, there was always this weird feeling, energy there. And one day I was looking up at the top of the stairs, and I may have been younger than 6, but there was an old woman standing up there, just clear, just like a regular person. She didn't look like an apparition at all. And I heard her in my head. She spoke telepathically to me, and she said, "Am I making you uncomfortable?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "Are you afraid?" And I said, "No." She said, would you like for me to leave?" And I said, "Yes." And then she disappeared, and I never saw her again. And that was the only time I ever actually saw them as if they were a physical person. After that, it was more apparition-like. And so to kind of backtrack a little bit, in other ways that I would use my gift, I never like outwardly channeled for people. I would give messages in very passive ways. So I would direct conversation. If I heard a message, I would direct the conversation so to get that person to start talking about whatever that subject was that the spirit needed them to talk about so they could get it out, Later on, when I got a little older, like around 10, my grandmother passed away, my mother's mom. And that was when I began questioning things. Before, I really didn't question at all. And I started questioning because when I looked at her in the coffin, she had no shine to her, no glow at all. And it really scared me because I thought, well, where is she then? Where did she go? I always took it for granted, I could speak to the others, and I didn't, until she passed away, I didn't connect that they were different from the way we are, until she died. And then I was like, well, then where is she? I could still feel her. I could even talk to her. She visited me in dreams once. She actually helped me to release my fear of death, which is kind of strange that a medium would be afraid of that, but we as human beings, we have those fears. And but she set me on that path of questioning where are they, and after many, many years of experiences and speaking and with spirits and channeling and stuff, I realized that they're not any certain place; they're in every place, And And so basically, after I got beyond all of that hardship in the early 2000s and stuff, and I started channeling again, it was because of Erik. And then I started doing it in a more open way. And it's been a slow process, but it is moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So in your opinion then, or as you see it, I would say you're channeling, right? But you have the mediumistic and psychic gifts as well.
Yeah.
Yeah? And not to get into what the mediumistic and psychic is, but what does the channeling offer something extra to the mediumship gift, doesn't it?
Yeah. Erik and I were talking about this the other night, and as well as several other things, but I don't want to get off track of your question. Erik said channeling is like, well, when you're a medium or a psychic or a channel, really you're on the river, right? You're just flowing down, right? But a medium and a psychic is specifically paying attention to things that they see on that journey. There's that tree, and it was covered in a red ribbon, and that kind of thing. And they pick up that because it's very specific to the person who is listening to it to help them know that you're in the right place, you're connected to the right loved one or whatever, or you're connected to the right event, or something in the future is going to happen that's going to play out exactly that way. So it's a very specific thing. Channeling, Erik says, is like, it's like you're flowing down that river and you're taking all of that in, but not so specific that that you're pulling out all of that. It's like not to say it's not general either. It's still the same vein, but it's like it flows more into the creative side of it. That is. Creating a tapestry or a work of art, in a sense, that is building a picture for us to help us with either getting through something in life, or or to manifest something in life. All of that, And Erik says that every person who channels also has elements of being a medium and a psychic too. So Erik says you can't really separate any of them. They're all really the same. It's just, and it's just how it's being used in that moment.
That's beautiful. And how do you normally bring him in? What's your what do you do in your imagination? Do you go through a door? Are you deep breathing in a certain way, or no?
I don't do anything really.
Just comes in.
Yeah.
Would you say you're a multi-dimensional channeler?
As far as like speaking to energies in other dimensions? Oh, wait.
Other than Erik?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've talked to all kinds. There's, species from other planets. I remember when I was 7 or 8, I remember I would lay in the yard and look up at the stars at night and tell my brother, oh, there's people up there, right? I'd point to the specific stars and he'd look at me like, you're weird. But I remember thinking, well, but it's true. So I've spoken to creatures, if you want to call them that. They're really not. They're basically, like us. They just have different looking bodies. But yes. And I've spoken to entities that don't live in dimensions that have physical form at all. There's just so many. There's like so many in ways that you can't even. It's hard to even put into words sometimes. Actually,
Lisa, what's been your experience of working with Robert as well?
Well, first I want to share that I love Robert so much. He's part of the family. And it took so much to convince him to come over and meet me for lunch. And there was a detour to get to my house because there was construction going on. So I said, well, I'll meet you at the McChevron, the McDonald's Chevron combo. My family freaked out. You are not going to meet him alone. He could be an axe murderer. Yeah, right. Does he seem like an axe murderer to you guys? But anyway, we became friends, and now every other Friday he comes to our family get-togethers and so on. And it's so nice to have a ready voice of Erik from my friend. One thing happened during one of the get-togethers. We went out to eat dinner somewhere, and Robert said, I'm tired. I said, well, go, honey, go lie down on the black couch over there. So we did, The rest of us went outside and sat at the table, and out comes Robert with a kind of a stern look on his face, his arms crossed. I go, oh my gosh, what did I say in the restaurant that pissed him off? Oh my gosh, let me think through our conversations. And he just kept staring at me. Then suddenly he says, Mom, don't you know who this is? Well, it's Erik. He had automatically just trans-channeled Erik. And so I hugged him, and Robert came to and said, what the heck is going on? And so that was kind of cool. And I got a hug from my Erik that day. But yeah, he's been a treasure in our life. Really has. Not just because he channels Erik, but because he's Robert, you know? He's family.
Thank you. And just to add on to that as well, you know, you can't convince anybody that Robert is bringing through Erik. This is a very personal thing for yourself as well, isn't it? And you're not here to convince anyone, are you? This is just for you. This is your truth. Yeah, I mean, because you do have that. There is some of that plays in sometimes with people, isn't there? But we spoke about that on the interview a bit. We just touched on it, maybe kind of surface level of it, it's about more than. It's not about the proof, is it? This the thing. It's about how it feels.
That's right, and I'm not in the business of trying to convince people. They have their own journey. I had mine, and it was like a roller coaster. I believe, and I don't believe. I believe, I don't believe. So yeah, if they try to solicit information from me, I'll share it. But I do not volunteer anything. It's just too hard to convince the skeptics.
So I'm actually really honored to have Rune here with me as well, Erik's dad. Now, I don't think you've ever been on camera before for channeling Erik, and it's a real honor to have you. I mean, I've got to know you just a tiny bit, and you know, you're a beautiful soul, and I can see, you know, just speaking to you, just how much this work has healed you, and we spoke about it in the interview, but to see it is something different. So can I just wanted to just briefly ask you before Erik comes through, just how healing this has been for yourself as well.
Yeah, so, you know, clearly it has been, I mean, this has been a journey that, you know, I don't wish upon anybody else for certain, but nevertheless, it's a journey that has been, you know, thrust upon us. And, but I want to go back to the second night after, you know, Erik, you know, passed away. And, you know, we were just basically, you know, completely, you know, beside ourselves. And then, you know, Erik came to me in a dream on the second night. And so he's, you know, he placed me outside in the backyard and right in front of my truck, the big old white truck that was back there, and he likes trucks, and says, you know, I'm okay. And he was standing like behind me, and you know, I knew it was his energy. You can, you know, there was just no question in my mind, you know, at the time. So he said, listen, I'm fine. I am okay. And so to prove to you how it is, I will show you. So I will lean to the right. So, I mean, you lean to the right, and then that's how I felt when I was here, and I felt this sense of, you know, dread, like nasty feeling, you know, just like heavy, and then now lean to the left, and this is how I feel now. And I felt this most elated feeling that I have ever felt. I mean, I can't describe it. It's just like wonderful. and then I stand right back up, straight back up, and says, "Now you see, I'm okay." And that was, and then I woke up. I told Elisa of it, and remind you this is the second night, and I think, at least for me, and I think for Elisa and the rest of the family, that was the beginning of the healing process that we eventually embarked on. For me, as many other thousands and thousands on the blog have it has opened something that is not only healing in the present, but also like life changing. I mean, it's an openness and a knowingness that to me, it's life changing. So it's too bad that we have to take one with the other, but when you dealt it, here we go. And this is I can't say it's a bonus. I mean, yeah, I guess it's a bonus, but man, what a journey, and what a healing journey it has been.
Well, just thank you so much just for those few short words there. That's beautiful what you had to say there. And others going through the same things as couples, that will mean a lot to them. Well, actually, just before we bring Erik in, I mean, just to ask you both as well, I mean, if other couples were to, they have to feel resonance towards this work, don't they? If they're gonna, if they're gonna look at life differently. But I mean, how healing between you both? How healing can this be for other couples going through the same thing? To explore the nature of reality in a sense.
I think it's extremely healing to know that your child, or whoever the deceased loved one is, still exists, just doesn't happen to have a body or any of the mental or physical ailments that came along with that body during life, and that they are just in a parallel dimension, and that they continue to want to have a relationship with you. I think it's extremely healing. Plus the bigger picture of just learning about the spiritual world, and about why we're here, why the human experience. That seems to just open your life and your mind and your heart up like never before.
Sure. I mean, we do know the statistics of couples that loses their a child or children, and the also them staying together, it's very low. And so I think this has really opened that cohesive togetherness that it has done, and it's been beautiful. And but I would say we're sort of a pioneering in a way in a new era, where we have a clearly a willing participant in Erik, and obviously willing mediums to take on his task or tasks, and then Elisa with her willing penmanship, and thank God for the internet, they can spread the word, which is a dynamic that I know we have not had that prior to in human history. So it creates this new dynamic of this kind of thing, and I think that a lot of people that has been, you talk about being in the closet on these kind of things, it is coming out, and this kind of triangle between them, including the dissemination through the internet, is just a very powerful thing, and this is just starting.
And just a few final questions. We're almost at the end here, but just my next question is:
are you picky about who you choose to work with, in the sense of who's going to bring Erik through? Because I mean, if I wanted to, potentially, I think I can channel Erik or an aspect of Erik. But if for the ones that work closely on your platform, are you? What's your discernment for that?
Oh, well, there's so many mediums with different styles. I tend to like the conversational ones, the ones that repeat word for word, because Erik has a certain style of dialogue that is very approachable and comforting and understandable, and he dumbs things down for us, especially me, which I need. And so I like that rather than he's showing me a rock. Does that have any significance for you? Things like that. It's just too hard to understand what Spirit's saying if I don't have a train of dialogue. So I like that. I've seen a lot of mediums. Some are terrible, but there are so many really good ones, and I'm really honored to work with them. I wish I had their gift. So I do channel Erik some, but it's more claircognizance. I just know what he's going to say, and it's kind of fun.
So, clearly that's her domain, so, but over the years now, I clearly, I watch the YouTubes, some of the trials of, what, who she tries out, and I can, form my own opinion if that medium is on or if it's a little off. So, and I give my 2 cents to it. I don't know if she pays attention to it at all, but
I do.
but I can I can pretty much see if the medium is on or not, and I just give my 2 cents in, and then she takes it, uses it as she wants.
I will say one more thing. Erik is kind of easy to channel for a lot of mediums because his energy is just huge. And like I said in the interview, I think it's because he gets so much love from the blog members, and it feeds his energy and his ego, maybe, if he has any. And he helps keep their filters down. I remember Erik saying through Jamie, don't weed me now. Don't weed me. So he keeps their filters in check a lot, which helps.
Let's bring Erik into this conversation. It's so cool to have your mum and dad next to you as well. This is unusual, isn't it?
He said, yeah. He said, well, maybe for them, because he said, I'm always around here. I'm always here. Yeah. And they speak to me all the time. All the time. Yeah.
I've been brought here. This is that feels the crazy part of it. You've brought me here.
Yep.
Have I had much say in this? I don't know so much.
No. He said, no.
No.
You do my bidding, man.
I love it.
Yeah. He was just talking about the foundation. A foundation. He was talking about all of this is like setting up, well, I'll go back to what he did show me the other day. The other day he was just out of the blue, he started telling me about how spirituality, it's like, you were talking earlier about how it was like a religion. He was bringing that up to me also. He was showing it how it was like national network with all of these different shows that are all based around spirituality, and that it was going to be very mainstream. He kind of makes a joke about how it's kind of like in here in the States they have this thing called the Christian Broadcasting Network, right? He says, it's kind of like that. It's like its own little network, but not quite as dogmatic. It's not meant to be dogmatic at all. He says, people might call it a certain ideology or a religion or whatever, but he says, you know what? It's really just about collectiveness, being a collective way of thinking that is meant to help us evolve. He says, and we'll figure out what the fuck to call it later. But right now, that's what it is.
Dude, that's so cool. Thank you for that. But, that's crazy because just this morning, with Crystal, we were talking about, converting my YouTube channel over to a network and creating content, spiritual TV shows, but actual reality TV shows and everything else. And I was just speaking to your mom about, this being one of them, and there's so many channels out there that want their own shows and to just bypass the TV networks.
Yeah. He says, fucking do it. Because he said the thing is, there are going to be some of them that want it to be very structured and like an Oprah kind of setting where it's very clean, and others, they're going to be like, I'm in my fucking kitchen, I'm washing my dishes, and I'm giving you messages with a cigarette in my mouth, right? And my hair all fucked up. It's just going to let them do it whatever the way they want, right? He says that's the thing, because that's human life, We're all different types.
I worried a little bit because I thought, oh man, it's got to be a big conventional network, and yet they're not. Are they going to take it? Are they not? And then it's like, hang on. Well, that's what YouTube's there for,
right?
Done properly.
Yeah, Erik says the thing is, all of this will be very disruptive. He said the word is disruptive for a reason. It's meant to shake it all up, right? We're in a period of time where everything is disruptive, and that gives us an opportunity for things that were in the past unable to get to the surface and have more attention to play to them, to get up there and have their time, right? He says, and everybody is fucking really, they've had their fucking fill of all the other shit that has gone on in life, all of the dogma, the ideology, he says, that has basically kept us very restrained. He says, now, of course, it's necessary for us because we, as human beings, we're like kids. We needed boundaries, and that, to a certain degree, taught us that. And so as a species now, we're going to expand that a bit, and we're going to start going into other things that are meant to expand us, not just our minds, but our intellect as well. Science, he says, oh my God, science, he says, it's going to be able to explain all of this, where it's coming from, all of that, he says, and they're going to be able to tap into it. And we're going to be able to use it for the common good in ways that where an individual doesn't necessarily need to do it, right? I guess he's showing me like equipment that can pull this kind of information down to let them like speak to us. That sounds very strange when you hear it, but he says when it happens, it'll just be like watching a television or something, he said. Because all this is just energy. He said everything that you're immersed in right now, that chair you're sitting on, everything, it's just a big pool of energy. And we're going to learn how to manipulate that.
Why did you, at the beginning of my journey in the UK, when I was speaking to Alison from The Shiny Show, why did you give me that message to tell me that it was a piece of the puzzle, and 3-4 months later, I'm here with you now?
He said to smack you in the back of the head. Right?
Right.
And, he said, because I'm telling you, once you figure all that out, it's like a smack in the back of the head to wake you up.
Well, if you told me what I know now, it would have been a bit too much.
That's right. So I'm smacking you now. That's what he said. Because this is the smack.
Right. What you hated the word religion before.
I don't like it.
But then you were saying to me, through Alison, but it's almost what it needs to be like.
He says only because if you think about religion, what it's done in the past, it's meant to create a structure, right? So he said there has to be that. Because if human beings don't have boundaries, because we are still a young species, it'll just turn into a big mess. Right? And it won't really get anywhere. It won't evolve as quickly as it could have had we developed some kind of structure around it. He said, now we need to be careful, though, about how much structure we put into that and make sure that we're not crossing a line of dogma. Because he said there are a lot of people who are in spirituality and they are genuinely practicing it, and they are genuinely being mediums and psychics, and they're using their gifts, but then they get this thing where they feel like the messages that they're interpreting and stuff are they're so strict with the interpretation that it becomes then dogma, and it has no room to grow and expand. And you have no room to question it. Erik says we need to make sure that doesn't happen.
So what does channeling.com...
Because we don't want to look down on other people.
No, absolutely not. I don't want that. I want it to be a place where you bring your truth to it as well.
Yeah.
Find your teacher.
And Erik says, and to be honest with each other, because he said, there are instances where someone may bring a truth that is, of course, it is their truth, and there's nothing wrong about that. But someone else needs to be able to say, but here's another way you could look at that truth, and take that or leave it if it resonates with you, right? You have to be open, emotionally honest and open with all of that, he says, in order to grow. Because he says if you just stay in your own little bubble, you're going to build your own little world, and it's going to fuck you up, he said. And you're going to get delusional.
Yeah,
because he said you won't be able to integrate with the rest of the society.
And we don't need any more of that neither. So
no.
Really, because part of me feels, well, if I just set up a foundation with channeling.com to bring all the channels together, whatever that is, right? It feels like, well, is that powerful enough to vibrate alongside the religions and to sort of, not take them on, but to be equal in some standard against them? Not against, because we're not against anything, but maybe that's where I'm just not sure of right now what it is this is. But it's almost like it feels like there's a gift, and if you so want it, it's yours, but takes responsibility to do it the right way.
Oh my gosh. Well, because this is what you just brought up is another thing Erik had brought up. I was talking to you about this, that Erik was saying that he was talking about going forward, that there will be a centralized, mediums in the past have always had to work on their own independently, and a lot of the times they don't even know other mediums, right? And he says it's very important for mediums, psychics, channelers, that anybody in that arena to be able to network with each other and to support each other in that process. And he was talking about how in the future that's what was going to be created, was something where mediums can congregate together, be able to have clients, right? And clients can be drawn to them based on whatever their specialties are. But yet at the same time, also they can pull from each other and how can they help themselves with their businesses, because some people that is necessary, they need to earn money, or emotional support, yes, or tips on how to interpret so that the message may resonate with more people. All of that, Erik says, that's necessary. And so he says everything that you're talking about, he said, don't worry about all that competition. There's nobody to compete against. Just do it. He says your intuition will lead you right. He said, okay. He said what'll happen is you'll get this intuition, this spark within you, and you'll be like, wow, this is exciting. But then the other side of your brain will be like, okay, well now I need to I'll get so into the details that then it can get overanalyzed, and then it might suck all the joy out of it, right? So he said, just, he said that's okay. That's good to be meticulous.
I feel kind of bad right now in one sense of taking up the space of this documentary, even though we don't know what's going to be included in it right now, but just to talk about this. But is this documentary showing the transparency of the birth of this thing? And why would it be so important to show the transparency of the birth of such a thing?
People need to know their history, he said. It's absolutely necessary, because it helps us to understand the path. Where do I go from here now that I know where I was, right?
But why did you contact me? Why me?
Because he said you know how to get shit done, right? He said that meticulousness that you have and that drive that you have, he said, that's why. Because you were going to do it. You weren't going to, he said you weren't going to sit there and like you have to be kinetic, like you have this idea in your head, and if you don't, it will eat you up, he says, and I knew that. And you weren't going to let yourself get eaten up, so you were going to move forward and do it. And you did it, you've done it. This is the first time, there'll be more, he says. This will build on something else.
You just mentioned the network there. That's so crazy. I was just talking about that today, and that's even talking to your parents about just a little bit of that as well.
He said, well, I kind of listened in. It's so funny.
Wow. Okay. Well, and just before we move on with any questions, we got your mum and dad here. Do you have anything that you? I don't want to just to think they're not, they can't speak to you.
He said they know how much I love them. They're always talking to me. They know.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. You
He was
hang
just talking about working on his truck with Papa.
He's a stalker.
Yeah, he hangs around.
He probably has a little app on his spirit telephone.
He said he's going to go out there to the shed and he's going to move everything around.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
just figured it out.
Because he says it's all nice and neat now. I'm going to fuck it up.
We just reorganized that.
And the other thing he said too, right before we started filming, he said he was going to fuck with your equipment. And then I noticed that the camera went off twice because you had to change the battery.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
He went like this. He said, "You're welcome."
So, what is important about this time that we live in now? Why is it a time of us coming together? What is going on right now?
Our survival depends on it. He said, as a species, human beings. This has happened with other species, but not every species goes through this. But we human beings seem to need something to motivate us to say, "Oh shit," and to wake us up. And it's usually our survival, right? So he says we are at a time where we are right there at this cliff, and we need to get our house in order. And the only way we will do that is to recognize how we are not the rulers of this world. We are caretakers. And the only way we will see that is to realize that we are all one species, human beings, we're all the same. And then to realize, this is already happening, that we are also species, or also family members with the other life on this planet and with the environment and all of that. It's necessary to get us all in tune with that, because otherwise we will not be welcomed into the universal community. We have to grow up first. He said, why do you think when angels and guides come in and they say, "My child," all the time? They only say that to humans because we're still children. We haven't grown up yet. And we're in adolescence right now. So we're almost adults.
We're all gods, aren't we? We are gods having a human experience.
He said, sure. It's funny the way he said that. Because he said the thing is, we absolutely have infinite potential, infinite capacity to do anything we want. He said, so humans, we could equate that to being gods. He said, of course. He said, I wouldn't necessarily use that word because there's a lot of ego attached to it. For some people when they use that. But he says we absolutely have infinite potential. Infinite capacity to grow and to learn and to evolve and to become things we never even dreamed. Things that we thought were not possible because we were so focused on the physical world and the rules of the physical world. That's all going to go away. This next century, if someone born in the 20th century were to all of a sudden magically appear in the 21st century, they would probably go crazy. Because there's things in the 22nd century that are so alien to them. Physical matter will be different because we will have learned how to control that, not only with our minds, but with technology. The people who have passed away, we won't need to miss them anymore because we will be able to be in contact with them. Erik says, what we don't understand is that the reality that we live in now is actually their reality also. We just don't know it yet. And so as a species, we're evolving towards recognizing that this heaven that we talk about is actually here. And we're the same with them.
The heaven that we talk about is actually here. So if we could multidimensionally travel just right now, are we saying that in this same space where we are right now, there exists something else?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no separation whatsoever. And Erik says, and when I refer to heaven, I'm talking about literally what you think happens when you die, right? Erik says, you really don't go anywhere. This body, you believe that because we have come into this reality for the purpose of actually expanding this reality into understanding and becoming aware of the fact that this reality is actually where he is also. We as a species, that's what we came here to do. And we're working towards that, Erik says. It's hard for us to fathom sometimes with where we are right now, but he says we're getting there. We're opening up that door.
So
and we're about to cross it.
It's real and it's not real.
It's not real because the only reason it would not be real to you, Erik says, is because you don't believe it yet. And because you don't, and the reason some people don't believe it is because they don't have the evidence yet, or they don't understand it yet. But once, and for those people, when they get to that point, then it will be real. There are other people, though, who they don't need that, and it already is real for them.
Because we create our reality.
And it's all based on how you process that reality, of course. And what your intentions are and what lessons that you have, Erik says, in the moment to understand, to get to a point where you can awaken to all of that.
So let me get this right then. On throughout this journey that people have talked about that the soul splits into a multitude amount of infinite numbers, infinite realities. So on a different reality then, you never crossed over and you were with your parents.
Erik says, yes, absolutely. He says there's an infinite number of those. He said, you can think of them as splitting. He says, I've used those phrases before, or those terms before, because it's very easy for humans to understand it. They think that, they have to see one-to-one, yes and no and all that stuff. From a spiritual perspective, though, there's no such thing. You don't split. You don't go in, you don't do anything. It's just like think of the soul as like a ripple, right? And those other lives represent each different ripple, of the soul, right? And of course, I've got an infinite number of lives going on where I haven't passed away. Another infinite number of lives that I did pass away, but not from the way that it happened in this life, right? There's somewhere I wasn't even born.
And are they all sort of affecting one another?
Yeah, they all interact with each other, he says. And the crazy ass shit about it, he says, is that there's no time, right? So he said they've all already happened. From the human perspective, from the spiritual perspective, I'm looking at it and it's just, they're all happened. And the reason that they happened is what made his soul possible. But yet his soul is also possible, but yet his soul is also creating those things. It's like this closed loop that has no beginning or end, right? It's always a loop. I mean, like a figure eight. The way he shows it to me is more like a 3, right? Like 3 symbols, right? There's past, and then there's the present and the future from our linear time perspective, right? And all of those events have all already happened simultaneously, and because they happened, the soul exists. And yet at the same time, the soul actually created those things.
So in this reality, you're even helping your parents come to an even granderness of their soul. That's not even putting it in a great way, but you're expanding their soul in such a way that it's going to be very beneficial for them. Or is beneficial for them in the grander scheme of that their oversoul as well.
He said, "Yeah." Mm-hmm. He speaks so nonchalant, like, "That's right." Yeah, because he says it's all about awakening. It's all about the soul. Not the soul itself already knows, he says, but there's a part of you that knows and a part of you that needs to know, right? When you're in the physical world, you need to know, right? You're learning and you're walking down this path that is eventually getting to the side of you that already knows. And that's the soul, right? Soul always needs that duality, at least in the human species. And so they're growing from all of this. So am I, because of them.
So are you, right, okay, you're growing as well, yes, of course.
The entity that is Erik, that is, in a sense, that part of me that is lived as the individual.
Yes, the suit,
when
yes.
I, project that little facet of me, yes. That part is growing. He says, but the crazy ass thing about it is that the part of me that is this bigger thing, yes. Right, from a human perspective, it already has grown. And the reason it has already grown to where it was is because of where I am now, continuing to grow, and yet it already is there. He said, does it fucking make sense? Does it just blow your fucking mind, man?
It does.
Because he says it's crazy. It's like, it doesn't, it's a paradox, he said. He says it's already happened, but yet it's happening because it's already happened.
Did it have to be so painful for Mum and Dad, though, the way this happened? I mean, was there another way for spiritual growth for Mum and Dad rather than this? Or is my judgment of painful, is that me judging?
He said the human side of us judges that. We don't see suffering and pain as, we don't judge it as good or bad. It's just an experience, right? Sometimes we have experiences in life that create a great deal of suffering because it's the only thing that would wake us up, right? And sometimes it's necessary because it's the only thing that will motivate us, right? And so that's why sometimes it has to happen that way for some people. And we know when we're in a soul, he says, I know it's so easy for the spirit to say this, and it can almost seem sometimes unempathetic or very cold, but these things are all planned out. You know, we have an intention of what it is we're going to learn and what we're going to experience, because it's meant to grow us, you know, individually, but also collectively. And we know that experience, it's not necessarily, he says, we don't really get so much into this, well, at least with us, he says, me and like spirits he's gravitated around. They don't really get into the specifics of, okay, I'm going to be born at this time, and I'm going to be born, and I'm going to have this and this and this experience. He says, really, it's just, I want to be a guide, and I want to focus on helping humans to wake up. And I want to know, and because that's necessary, I need to realize that I need to go through, there's going to be some things that are going to be considered challenges as human beings, dark feelings of emotions and all of that, because I like to focus on the emotional side of shit, right? And so I had to live a life that would then reflect all of that. The choices that I make in life, he says, are being driven by that intent, but I also still have free will in how those things will play out.
But in other parallel universes, which I guess, you know, this documentary has gone into the multidimensional aspect for a reason, because we're seeing that now. In the other parallel universes, where you've not crossed over, was the spiritual growth?
I speak to myself in those universes.
You speak to yourself?
Yeah. Because he says, there are universes where I've come close to those things, and I've actually stopped myself and shown them how this is already played out. They don't necessarily pick it up in exactly that way, right? But I will play it out in a different way, or their guides who are connected to me also will help to pull them away from that. Because in some of those lives, they have gotten to the precipice for that.
But when you didn't go to the precipice, was it as much growth from Mum and Dad in those lives?
Yeah, because those lives are connected to this life.
So right? All lives are feeding each other.
They're all, feeding each other.
With that knowing then, the more you come from love in this life, in any decisions that you make, or whatever love may be to you, but it's normally a very love is who we truly are, then you're healing all the other lives, parallel universe lives as well. You're feeding into them.
That's right, yeah.
What about when negativity from those other parallel lives feed into this life? Do we don't have to, are we influenced by that a little bit?
Well, he says that the thing about the negativity and the positivity, it's all, we don't see it that way at all. Because he says, in the physical world, there's no such thing as construction and destruction in the spiritual world, he says, because there's just its existence, right? But within the realities that play out within that help, that are part of that energy, construction and destruction are necessary. So we would equate that to positive emotion, negative emotion, all of that. Those are equally important in order to help to in a sense create new realities, to help motivate us to move in certain directions, he says. Yes. So sometimes when you're in a rut, yes, right, and you need to get someplace else, a lot of times people get in a rut because their lives have fallen apart. There's been destruction, right? But if they had not experienced that, they would not have gotten to a place where they're like, oh my God, I got to go somewhere else to become constructive. And so he says all of this about healing that you spoke of. Yes. He said, the soul is already healed. So he said that what happens in the individual lives is
perfect already.
The soul is already perfect the way it is. In all these individual lives, he says, they go through processes of being wounded and then being healed, but it's necessary for their growth in those lives. Humans need duality. And in order to have that, you have to have polarity, you have to have two sides. Other species, though, don't necessarily go through what we go through. They don't necessarily have to deal with duality. But, here's the crazy shit, he says, they are not having to experience that because we're experiencing for them, because we are also part of their souls as well. So their lives are tied into ours too.
I'm just, it's almost like, I want Mum to do a show where she's channeling a multi-dimensional version of Erik in a lifetime where this has not happened. And there's many shows that could just be on that, couldn't there, about what those lifetimes are like. I'm sure in other parallel universes, maybe channeling became a mainstream religion already.
Yeah, he just showed himself wearing a suit and working in an office just now in one of these other universes.
God, so there's so much information. Even when you there's nothing to run out of information, because when you start tapping into the parallel lives, there's so much information to be brought from them, because it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's an infinite amount of information that you can, from a human perspective, can get. As far as like Erik says the story of the lives, right? It's interesting to hear all of that, but he says when I tell you like all of the things that have played out in it.
Yes.
If I told you enough of them, you start to realize that, but they're all the same story.
They're all the same story. Well, what about if you wanted to connect to the aspect of you that's already crossed over? So what about if Elisa wanted to connect to herself that's already crossed over? If everything is happened now, if everything is one, we've already passed over, right? Mm-hmm. Could we connect to the aspect of us that's already crossed over to give us information into this present moment that could be healing to help this?
Yeah, actually, that's happened with me before. Mm-hmm. I've had instances where I was in situations where I knew I like it was very damaging for me, and I would see older versions of myself telling me, "This is not where you're supposed to be," right? Yeah, I've had that happen before, so it can happen.
But you still did this?
No, I would actually, like if I would be in the moment of doing something that wasn't good for me, a bad habit or whatever. I would get that visual or get that visit from myself, and then I would stop it.
So those parallel universes, lives, are they all happening in this space? So this space in a parallel universe exists in the same space,
right?
Even though the continents may be a bit different, or they're not that much different.
Yeah, there's no separation whatsoever. Erik says not shitty, because he says it's not shitty, but he said the crazy ass shit, is what he was saying, about this is that you think you're walking someplace. You're walking, from here to the bathroom, or you're on a plane and you're flying to Europe, He says you're not going anywhere. The soul is just a point that's sitting there, right? Or all of this energy, it's just there. And it's moving around you. Or in a sense, you're sitting here and it's just like, gets created around you and moves and makes you think you're going somewhere when you aren't going anywhere.
What the fuck is that?
He says it's fucked up, right?
So therefore then, what really is this?
He said, think of it like this. He says, the way he showed it to me is, you're a person, you're standing on a rug. You're not moving across the rug is just sliding underneath you. Making you think that you're going someplace.
A bit like the holodeck on Star Trek.
That's a good way to put it.
Because these things are given to us so that
Except
we think...
he says on a holodeck you still walk around.
Right.
But he says, because your soul itself, it's he says, I can't say it's static, it's not moving, it's just everything gets created around that. It's like a singularity or something. Like in a
Is
sense,
that your
like
truth? Is that your truth, Erik?
He says, everything that I have seen with other spirits and all of this, that's how it's played out. Now, there are a lot of spirits, though, that don't see it that way, he says, because it's just how they're viewing it. So he says, yeah, you could say it's my truth. But there are a lot of other spirits, though, that also see it that way.
But as a God, I could create my own truth and see it from a different way.
All right. Yeah. But he says...
what would be the benefit of that, though? or for me to see it from a different way to you?
Because it's important, he said, for diversity, he says, of thought. He says thought is important in all things. There's no limitation to how you perceive the world and how you choose to create it.
To not get addicted to your truth.
Right. Because he says eventually what will happen is you'll start to realize, some spirits start to realize that, now he says this is less about a soul and more about like non-corporeal, because there are non-corporeal that are not spirits, but yet there's like they're having a life that's separate from spirit, to live in this place of like separateness, right? And they have the ability to manifest all of like what you're talking about, right? And a lot of them will get to a point where they start to realize that this is all being manifested because I'm putting myself in the center of this, and it's all about me.
Right.
Eventually they expand beyond that and realize it's not about them, and they're just a part of something collective.
But we have to act though as though the information you're giving us. I mean, when I'm out and about at Starbucks or something like that, I'm not thinking of these things completely like that. I'm just in the moment, in the present moment, and which is the most powerful.
Erik says and Erik says when you're at Starbucks, for instance, you're not alone in creating that experience. Everybody in that environment is helping to create it for you too.
Is this some sort of? This is my truth, but is this some sort of mass reflection, mass life review that we're all having? Have we already crossed over and this is some sort of life review? We've already done this, but we've come back.
He said that's right. He said nobody realizes that there's no such thing as like incarnating and all of that. You know, this is just a reality that is already played out before that we are living in because it needed to play out.
So how many times have we been playing it out for?
Well, there's no number, he says. It's infinite.
Because each time is different.
It's different depending on your perspective, Erik says, because it's ultimately always the same in whatever time frame that like this, for instance, this time frame we're in right now, it's always the same. It's always, we had this certain path that led to its conclusion way down the road, right? That time frame is always the same, right? Because all of the choices that have already been made in that time frame have been set. But as soon as there's a deviation from that, there's a different reality that you can think of as parallel to it, right? And there's a different one, and a different one, and a different one. It's infinite. And
something that we're not going to get into understanding in this conversation because we're using the intellectual mind to try to.
He says, and there's science that we just don't have yet to be able to adequately verbalize it.
So when I pick up a book, someone else's truth, and it says, "Oh, you will have a life review, blah 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 blah," have we just got it asked about face, and this is it already in a sense? But is that my truth I want on this documentary?
Erik says, of course, it's going to be your truth. That's what you ultimately need to focus on, right? Erik says. At the same time, though, you do need to ask the question, is this my truth? Because Erik says you're going to learn from it and you're going to do some self-assessment. He says there are absolutely people who live in the physical world that focus on the life that they have, the day-to-day, and do a review of it throughout the life because they've instinctively knew that that's what they're going to do when they cross over anyway, right? And then there are others who don't do that, and they have their life review eventually, because Erik says we all do, because it's necessary for closure of that energy. It's like a current, right? You have to, in a sense, kind of wrap that all up. And so we have to go through that process.
And I've been a bit of a stuck rabbit here, but so maybe before we lived it that big, but maybe now, knowing that, we could live it just that big.
Yeah, there's just no limit. The limits we create ourselves individually, but ultimately the individual limits we put on ourselves are because of the collective. The collective, has this.
But then could you think of it that, we're shifting realities maybe? Is that the same thing for it? That, see, it's all around the houses here, isn't it? One minute it's a life review, next minute we're shifting realities.
About to fucking pop off your shoulders. He said, your brain is so fucking fried right now. He said, I'm loving the shit out of this. He said, it's so funny. Because your
really
brain,
is. It
he
really
shows
is.
it to me. It's like this cauldron, and it's just bubbling, and it's almost like out of water. He said you need to add more water to it because it's going to burn itself out.
It's fascinating to think that what we thought we knew, we don't know.
That's right. He says
We know fuck all.
Yeah, he says, and as long as we are in this reality, this physical reality, it's going to be that way.
But love is a good place to start.
Absolutely, he says. That's the best place to start because it's the one thing that reminds us to stay connected to each other. He said even people who are not coming from a place of love, they're still connected, right? But they're not getting to enjoy that feeling, right? And he says at the same time, they're actually motivating those who are in love to stay in there, stay in love. So they serve a purpose. Everything serves a purpose, he says. Nothing is ever done without a purpose to it.
It feels sometimes, though, that we can't, if it's not in our best calling, we can't have it. If it's not best for, even though we really want it, we may be in love with it as well, maybe, but it's not all, well, no, if we're in love with it, that's different, maybe.
Well,
maybe it does
Erik
come.
says, here's the thing about it. Sometimes we have a calling that is really not, like you just said, he says, not ours, and we have an obsession over it. And our obsession always comes from a place of scarcity. And so he says, what you're doing is you're telling the universe, I want this because I don't have it. So the universe is like, well, then you'll never have it, right? Erik says you have to live it as if it is true, because it is true. And not coming from a place of, oh my God, am I going to get it? Am I going to get it? He said, well, you're never going to fucking get it. He said, how many times you go up to a chick and start begging for it, and she's like, oh, what a turnoff. The universe does the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Been there, done it.
He's like, I mean, please. And then she's going to like, well, he said, of course, the universe doesn't sit there and go, well, then now I can control you. He says, well, to a degree, that's happening, right? But you're the one doing the control of yourself and how your behavior is.
Yes. When you really are found in love with something and no addictions to the outcome, but you just keep loving it.
Yeah, he says that's what's important. You stay in that place.
It pulls and it pulls it so quickly, and it's like, well,
and it will feed you. It won't drain you. Obsession will drain you. Anything that comes from a place of scarcity will drain you because that's what scarcity is. It's meant to pull away.
And only people watching this documentary right now, as they hear this conversation, are going to be. This is where they needed to be right now to be watching this, because this is their awakening, or this is part of their evolution. Watching this right now.
Yeah, he says that's right. He's like, why do I even need to answer the questions? You already know the answers.
I do, but I want you to say it.
He said, I just want people to, he said, when people watch this, he says, that's absolutely right. They're going to be in a place where they needed to be to hear those words, and it's going to wake stuff up in them. And they're going to do the same thing as you. Their brain's going to start sizzling. He said, and I'm going to laugh all the way, right? Because he says, I know that this is good. This is a good thing. That's all we're here to do, is to help grow humans and this planet.
And our growth is your growth.
He said, that's right.
And your growth is our growth.
That's right.
Because we're still connected. We're all one.
Always, he said. It's impossible to be separate, he says. When we live in this physical world, it's what we think. We think we're separate. And, he says, we sit here and we struggle to try and find something to make us feel connected. And he says, for some people, they get to that place. For some, they don't. But either way, they're two versions of the same coin. You're still a human, and you got both sides of it now from having had all those experiences. And that gets into the DNA of the species, right? And helps to perpetuate those who are coming up now. He says, all of these younger kids that are coming up, that are being born now, who will see the 22nd century, they're going to have such a different perspective because of the work you're doing. And my mom and pop, everybody.
Well, listen, I'm just going to pass you over to your mum and dad just in case they want to just say anything as well.
Well, I don't have anything to say except I love you. Come visit. Come prank me. Come give me a hug. Sit on my lap like you used to.
Mom, I always try to prank you. You think I don't? But I always do. but you just don't see them sometimes, right?
Well, you
He
got
said, because you just get so busy.
You gotta have a 2x4 hit me over
He
the
said, you
head.
get so busy.
Yeah, that's true. And my mind is like, oh, a squirrel.
Right. He
Oh,
said, that makes my job so much harder.
Yeah, well, I love you. So, and I know you're around here, all the time. My problem is probably I'm too grounded to sometimes actually see you on the physical, like physically, but I do feel you. And anyway, so that's it. I love you.
And he said he loves you too, Papa.
Well, Erik, not many words except for I love you too, and just thank you very much for coming through. Thank you.
He said, peace out.
Peace out, brother.
He went like this.
Thank you.